So are you ready for another episode of Smalls That Sell and Making Money with Woodworking? This is a series that's all about breaking down what's hot and trending in the big box stores so that ultimately we can recreate just about anything that we see. Now, copying these items is not the purpose of this. It's being able to take those items and recreate something of our own. So as I'm going through these, keep an open mind and see what type of creative twist that you can add in. Okay, so for our first one, what caught my eye about this build is that it was actually really cool and it fell into a special category that affects almost every homeowner out there, and they're all willing to pay money to fix this problem. And that's going to be this reclaimed privacy screen. Okay, so it's really not a privacy screen like what you'd be thinking. Let's just call it a, what else do you call it? Hider, junk hider, privacy screen. Ultimately, this thing is to hide unsightly items. So like trash cans, in this case, it's like an air conditioning system. You could use it for like a pool pump or something like that. So what do you actually call this? Maybe privacy screen is the best. Okay, if you can think of something to call this thing, because I'm going to call it a junk hider, then drop it down into the comments, because I'm pretty sure that junk hider is not the best marketing name for this. Okay, so back to our privacy screen junk hider. This thing is actually really cool. The ones that I've seen in the past were really cheap, flimsy, and usually made of plastic. Now for this one, they've actually used reclaimed material, which is most likely pallet wood, but they were wanting $185 for these two panels. And like I said, almost everyone out there has something in the yard that is unsightly and that they want to hide. And what makes this particular version unique is that it's not unsightly itself. It's actually pretty cool and will add to the decorations on the outside of the house. So how did they build this? Let's go ahead and break all of these parts down, and you're going to find out just how simple that this thing would be to make. So honestly, this is made up with just a few parts if you kind of picture this exploded and look at it. So the first thing that catches your eye is this center panel, okay? And that's another thing that makes this a cool looking build. It kind of looks like a cabinet door. So let's say if we just pop that off, set that to the side, and then we have our two side rails and our two top rails, okay? Again, let's just pop those off. We're doing this in our head. Don't make these motions like sitting on your couch right now. People think you're crazy. You get sent off and have tests done. So if you look at the edge of this entire thing, it's really only about an inch or an inch and a half thick. So if you wanted to use half-inch material, that's completely fine. Or if you wanted to use 3/4 inch material. And that is another thing that they've done really well with this, is built it heavy. So now with your exploded view in your head, this back panel is a 30 by 40. So how are we going to put that together? It's completely up to you. You can use any type of material that you want. You can glue and clamp boards together to make a 30 by 40, or you can use pocket hole screws. Again, completely up to you. If it were me, you know, I dig on some fence pickets. I would just rip down some fence pickets to 5-inch widths. That way that I could use the same dimension board for this entire project. So let's say that that's what you've done. You have some 5-inch material and you've joined it up to make your 30 by 40 backboard. So now with that made, let's go ahead and add our sideboards to this. Now, if you notice, the two boards on the outside edges are longer, sticking up a little further, maybe about 3/4 of an inch on the top and the bottom. So since our backboard is 40 inches tall, let's go ahead and cut these two sideboards at 41.5 inches long. Line these up with the outside edges of our backboard. Leave 3/4 of an inch overhang on the top and 3/4 of an inch on the bottom. Attach these to your backboard using some wood glue and some screws from the inside, that way that they're hidden. And then for our two boards on the top, since this is 30 inches wide, we have two boards that are 5 inches wide attached. That's going to leave us with 20 inches in between. So we'll need two boards that are 20 inches long. Same process for attaching it to the back, except no overhang. And that's what's going to give these sideboards that raised look. Now that we have all of our trim boards attached to the back, how about our center panel? Okay, so I know what you're thinking here. First time that you're looking at it, you're like, okay, they've ran this to a shaper. You have to have big equipment to do this. Well, they probably did run this to a shaper if they're pumping out tons of this stuff. But you can get a look that is very similar using your router, or you can even do this with a table saw. So as an example, I cut this board just a minute ago using my table saw set at 45 degrees and pretty close there. That's probably a little more acute of an angle, but I think that this will actually do the trick. Because once you've inset this into the frame that you've made, we'll make sure to leave about an inch from all sides. It's going to give it this three-dimensional look, making it look like a cabinet door. So as far as the panel size itself, it'll need to be an 18 by 28 to leave you enough room to leave spacing all the way around. And once you have your panel all cut, you'll simply just attach it to the center, measure it out, and then use glue and screws to attach. Now that's one panel, okay? So that's super quick and super easy to make. You do the exact same thing to make your second panel. Now they've used a couple of old hinges to give it this rusted look. I guarantee you that these are new hinges that they just rusted themselves. And for me, I just pick up a couple of steel hinges and let nature do its thing. Regardless of how you decide to put these things together, you could actually get really creative with this and come up with a lot of different styles, and I will guarantee you these things will sell. You make different sizes for different types of items or junk that people want to hide. So again, air conditioners, gas meters, electrical boxes, trash cans. Again, check your code, make sure that you are allowed to actually be covering these things up. You know, make sure to stay far enough away. Have to throw that in there. Don't want to knock out the power for half the county. And they're wanting $185 a set for these. If for me, depending on how much that I actually had in these things, I'd probably try to stick to around 125 bucks. I really don't think that I would have any trouble at all selling these things. Okay, so this next one, we've actually built a couple of different styles of this, but what caught my eye about this one is I've never seen anything like it before, and it's actually really neat. And it's this garden basket. Okay, so check this out. They have taken something that is hot, always sold well, garden baskets, and put a new twist to it. And this is what I'm talking about thinking outside of the box and creating new items from items that already exist. So check out what they've used for the sides of this thing. Whenever I first looked at this, I'm like, so did they round over each one of these little square blocks with a sander? No, they used a dowel rod and split that thing in half, making these super cool side rails. And since we've never covered anything breaking down dowels like this before, it's obviously a must because it gives us another super cheap item, dowel rods, that we can use for other projects. So as we're going through this one, just keep your mind open for other items that have sold well for you that you could use split dowel rods that spice it up a little bit. So this particular basket is 23.5 inches wide, which I really like. And they've done that by extending this basket out. Typically, whenever you see these wooden baskets, the parts that they're using for the dividers are actually the end parts of the basket. By turning them into dividers, which will allow you to get this extra wide basket, which will definitely catch some eyes. Then the overall width of this thing is around 7.5 inches wide, and it's around 12 inches tall. So they probably use some material that's right around 6 inches wide. For me, again, I would use material that I have already cut to around that width, which is going to be fence picket material. Because if you look at the edge of these dividers, they're only about 1/2 inch thick each. So let's say that I'm going to be using 1/2 inch material for my base, my sides, and my dividers. I'm going to start off by cutting my two end pieces the same width as my bottom board. So two boards that are 5.5 inches wide. And then for the bottom board itself, I want my two end boards to kind of cover up the ends of that bottom board. So I want this bottom board to be a little shorter. So since the two sides are 1/2 inch thick each, let's make this bottom board 22.5 inches long. And our two end boards, the length of those needs to match the width of the bottom board. And these look like that they're only about 4 inches tall. So the easiest way to do that is whenever you're cutting your bottom board, just use the exact same material, cut your 22.5 inches, slide it down, and cut two more boards that are 4 inches wide. Then you'll take your 4-inch boards, slide those down over the edges of your bottom boards, and install with some wood glue and brad nails. Okay, so now we have a bottom and our two ends. Let's go ahead and finish this bottom up, making it kind of look like a long crate. Actually, a crate with these dowel rods, another awesome idea. But let's stay focused. Okay, so for this dowel rod side, took a 3/4 inch dowel, and just kind of ran it through the table saw just to see how wide of a piece that I would have left. By the time that your blade removes the material for the kerf, it's probably going to look better with some 7/8 or 1 inch dowel. So for that, you're going to need 3 pieces of dowel rod that are 23.5 inches long, and then you'll just rip those right down the middle on the table saw. So now that you have your 6 split dowel pieces, let's go ahead and attach those to our sides. We'll start at the very bottom and bring it all the way down to the base, then attach those with wood glue and brad nails. And for my next one, I'm going to attach it to the top of my 2 end pieces. Take my third one and put it right in between, flip it around, do the exact same thing, and then we're ready for our dividers. Okay, so for these dividers, they are going to be super easy to make, so don't let this odd shape get to you. We've cut out several different odd shaped items on this channel now, so you should be getting pretty comfortable with it. So all that you have to do is take the same 5.5 inch material that you use for everything else and cut 2 boards that are 12 inches long. And then from the bottom of each one of those boards, measure up 4 inches, make a mark on both sides, and I'll make a mark at the very center of my board at the top, and use those as a guide to kind of sketch out this long paddle looking divider. I know I have been whipped with one of those before. Principal maybe, my mom, grandma, all of them. Who knows? I've been whipped with something that looks just like that. So once you have this paddle design for our new paddle basket here, just kind of sketched out there, you know what you're going to do. Jigsaw time. Jigsaw around that for your first one. You use that as your template. So if you need to sand off some edges, shape it up a little bit, do it. But use that one as your template for the second one. Next, we're going to cut this hole for this paddle at the top. The ones that I've always seen usually had a piece of string hanging in it so they could hang it on the wall behind them so they could grab it. This one's going to be used for a dowel rod. Whatever size dowel that you're using for the rest of the project, make sure to drill your hole at that size. So if you're using 1-inch dowel, let's go ahead and drill the 1-inch holes into our paddles. And then for the handle part, go ahead and cut another 12 inches of your dowel rod for that. Then we'll take our 2 dividers or hind end warmers, slide those down into the inside of our dowel sides. Then we'll attach our sides to the dividers just to hold these into place at about 8 inches from each end. You can use wood glue and brad nails for that, and flip this up and install some more from the bottom. And then the last thing left to do is to install this handle, and you know exactly what to do. You just run your dowel rod through the holes that you've made. You can simply pre-drill and install a screw from the top of your divider to hold that dowel into place. And just like that, using very affordable material, you've made something that is super unique and that would sell like crazy. Personally, I would be putting this type of an item at the top of my list this year because it's an evergreen item. You could sell these things all year long. They're getting 50 bucks a piece out of these, and that's really not a bad price. If you get your timing down and your jigs made, you could sell these for 35, 40 bucks a piece and make a ton of profit all day long. Now I just want to take a minute to thank the sponsor of today's video, and that is Mousy Tools. A little while back they sent me their X-Tape 1 to try out, and I am glad that they did because this thing is an absolute game changer. So this is not an ordinary tape measure in any way. This is a digital laser tape measure. That means that you can use it just like a regular tape measure, but with the press of a button, it instantly switches into laser measure mode. And the accuracy of this thing is outstanding. Within a 32nd of an inch with the digital tape and a 1/16 of an inch with the laser. The 2-inch IPS color display is clean, bright, and has a variety of different display modes. It also features a bright green aligning laser, perfect for lining up against walls, shelving, or uneven spaces. And one of my favorite features is the line split function. So you can take material of any length, input how many sections that you would like it broken down to, and the X-Tape 1 will do the math for you and let you know exactly where you need to make your mark. And the point-to-point laser measurement is a game changer for me. I'm not a big fan of ladders. Now getting accurate measurements in hard to reach places is a piece of cake. The memory feature stores everything right on the tape or to a linked device. And honestly, that's just scratching the surface. The X-Tape 1 is packed with features, so whether you're into woodworking, remodeling, or just love having smart tools that make life easier, this one's definitely worth checking out. So another big thanks to Mousy Tools and their X-Tape 1 for sponsoring today's video. And if this seems like something that may come in handy around your shop, make sure to throw a link in the description. So this next one is super easy to make, looks awesome, and one of the best parts of it, it's an item that you usually sell multiples of. That's going to be this distressed whitewood shelf. Okay, whenever you first look at this, obviously you're seeing the distressing, you're seeing some different types of trim and some contrasting colors. This is a 22-inch shelf that they're selling for 65 bucks a piece, and we can make them a whole lot cheaper. So as far as the base of this entire thing, it's essentially a box for the openings facing the wall. And then they've taken that box and just kind of built out from that. This particular shelf is 22 inches wide, and it's really not all that tall. If you look at this person's hand that's over there, yeah, it's not very thick there. So I'd use a 1x6 for this. You can pick them up for around 5 bucks a piece, and you can get all the material out of it that you need for your main parts. So whatever size board that you're going to be using, we're going to start off by cutting our top for this, which is going to be a 22-inch long board. We'll set that aside, and then the material that you have left, go ahead and cut a 45-degree angle on one end of the board, flip it over, and cut a 45-degree angle on the opposite end. Set your saw back to 90 degrees or 0, measure over 4 inches from the end, and then just make a flush cut. Do the same thing for the opposite side. What that's going to do is to give you your two side boards that need to be 4 inches in length without getting your hands too close to the miter saw. And using the material that you still have on your saw, go ahead and flip the board over, use the 45-degree angle that you cut for an end, measure down 22 inches, and make another 45-degree cut. We'll go ahead and attach our two ends. It's going to give you something that looks like this. So I just use plywood for this. Honestly, you could do that too because most of this is going to be covered up. If you decide to go with plywood for your base, just use solid wood for your top. Then the only thing left that we're going to need for our main box here is going to be the bottom or the inside piece. And you're not going to worry about 45s or anything like that for this. It's going to be a simple butt joint because it's going to be completely hidden. Measure from your front board all the way to the back of your backboard. In this case, it will be 3.5 inches. And then the full length that we'll need would be 20.5. Once you have this part made up, it's super simple just to measure this out. And then let's say that this was actually ripped down to size. You just slide it right in, butt it up, pop in some wood glue, brad nails, and now you have your bottom board. Now I'll go ahead and put on my top board, leaving about 1 inch of overhang on each side and the front. You could rip this down a little more narrow if you would like. Really depends on the next step, what type of trim that you're going to be using. So what makes this build so neat is it's a basic box that's essentially just highlighted with the trim. Obviously, you can buy different profiles of trim for about anything, but trim's pretty expensive. Now, this is where a router would come in super handy because just about every one of these profiles that are pretty expensive to buy, you can make these exact same profiles with a router. What I typically do whenever I'm making my own trim, just take a nice piece of wood, go ahead and cut that profile all the way down one edge of a board, flip the board around, cut the profile down the second long edge, and rip that down to the thickness that I want it. So let's say this cove molding here, you can easily cut this profile into the side of a board and then just rip 3/4 of an inch off. If you're not comfortable using a router, we're not going to be using a ton of this for this build. You can just pick some up at the store. So the trim is what makes this look so expensive. It's also what's going to give you the freedom to get creative and make this thing look amazing. So let's say if you're using some cove molding, you could just slide it underneath there, or you could actually just flip it around and put it on the bottom. Basically, it's all that you're doing is adding dimension to this flat surface. For me, I'd probably put some cove molding on the bottom, maybe some of this little fluted molding here at the top, or even on the edge of the board. I would kind of shake it up a little bit. Natural top, white painted fluted molding, or you could also take some quarter round and install it here. Essentially, you can do whatever that you would like with this thing. So for an example that it doesn't take a ton of money to do this, this is just a 1/4 by 1/4 strip that I've painted white. Okay, so if we install that in something like this, it actually looks like a piece of molding, and they actually sell molding like this. So get creative, design this thing up however that you would like. And then if you wanted to make the bottom 2 brackets for this thing, that would be completely up to you. I actually think that it looks better without those 2 brackets. But if you did want to make those, you could just take these scrap pieces of the board that you have left, sketch out a little something like this. Again, doesn't have to be perfect, and just cut that out with a jigsaw. Use that as a template for your second one and then attach those to your bottom boards. There's several different ways that you can design this molding. Let's say that your top boards are a little wider than the rest of your material. You can actually leave this off until you get all of your trim on. That way that you can see exactly how much overhang is going to look the best. Again, that's going to be completely up to you. But as far as this look goes, I really like it. And we've talked about this before. It's not about what we like, it's what the customer likes. So do a couple different things. I like rustic. Some people hate rustic. So instead of distressing all of this up, the bottom could be a nice clean white, and then the top a dark contrasting color. And if you like this particular look, you can easily distress this bottom up just using some black spray paint as your base. Go over the top with some white, let all of that dry, then hand distress this thing down with some sandpaper until you get the look that you want. I know that probably sounded like a lot, but it's really not, and it really goes quick. I built this little thing in about a minute just using some scrap wood that I had laying underneath my table. In most cases, it takes longer to explain how to do something than to actually do it. So this is a project that I want you to try out. And the reason why is because you can get creative with this. How it turns out is going to be completely up to you. Put your own twist to it. Go over some of the different things that we've learned on the channel, like putting different grooves and notches into our material just using the table saw. Get creative and make something awesome. You're getting 65 bucks a piece out of these things, most likely selling multiples every single time. And if it were me, that's the price point that I would be at. Okay, so I really like this episode because it is forcing you out of that comfort zone. And there's a quote that I've said before, a comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there, and it is the truth. If you're not willing to push yourself out of that comfort zone, it's just like the quote says, nothing ever grows there. It means that you will not be able to grow as a maker or really anything else that you strive for in life. So challenge yourself, not just to make these items, but to make creative items that will push you into a place where you can grow. Until next time, we'll see you. Imagine taking a pile of wood and turning it into something amazing. Now, imagine doing that without years of frustration. You do not need a fancy workshop, expensive tools, or years of experience. With Woodworking Kickstart, you'll build confidence and real skills in no time. So you can spend years making mistakes and learning the hard way like I did, or you can start building with confidence today. So join me in Woodworking Kickstart and let's get your journey started.